Hi.
Great. Hi, this is Christine Pereira from Soulful Selling Bootcamp, and I'm here with Indigo Ocean, and we're very excited. Oh, hey, thanks for joining, you guys. I see a couple friends here. Do you want to give a quick intro on yourself?
Sure. I'm the host of Conscious Business Leaders TV, and I'm the president of Awaken Business Consulting, which is my second business consulting firm. My firm for most of the last 8 years was Aspiritech, which did more corporate level business consulting with mostly corporate clients. And then in the last year, I decided to bring together my background as a counselor, art therapist, and spiritual counselor with that business consulting work to work with sole proprietors who
Mm-hmm.
are wanting to grow their business and really want like a real business, like
Right.
they actually want the different parts of it built out, but they still want to address the fact that they are a spiritual being
Mm.
running a business, and
Right.
for that to be really wed together. And that's Awaken.
Yeah, and I love that. And I read a little bit about that on your website, and I thought that was so interesting because I'm kind of trying to do something similar. My background is in corporate sales, and I worked in digital media for several years, big Fortune 500 companies, for over 15 years. And I realized that, there's so many entrepreneurs who need help just with the sales piece, and in a way that they don't have to feel like they're being salesy or it just doesn't feel right. Because I think, generating revenue for your business, especially if you're a small business owner, is one of the most important things, right? But also making sure you're aligned and with your integrity and you're doing it in a soulful way, I think is so important. So I was so glad to find you. And you're in Oakland too, right?
No, but I am in the
Oh, you're
East
in the
Bay.
East Bay. Oh, awesome. So it's so great to see people in the East Bay in Northern California. So
Yeah.
awesome. So tell me, now you also have Conscious Leaders TV, is that?
Yeah, which is my interview show.
Mhm.
So many years ago, before the business consulting, when I was just doing the spiritual counseling, I had a radio show called Together in Spirit.
Oh,
And I had some
awesome.
of the most amazing guests. Like I had Byron Katie on, I
Wow.
had James Twyman, I just like these really amazing
Mhm.
people. And it was a really great show. It was #1 show on the network,
Mhm.
actually. And I totally burned out on it. Like I was doing it with no support. I was trying to start my first business at the same time. I was working like 7 days a week with international teams from like early in the morning while like reading all the books of my upcoming guests. And
Mhm.
I totally burned myself out on it. But then when Blab came along, I was like, you know
Oh,
what?
time to restart.
I think it's time to restart, and this time with that extra element of the business focus to how we kind of just focus the
Mhm.
conversation about being spiritual in the world.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that was something amazing to have people like that you were interviewing. How
I know,
cool.
incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what do you,
Nerve wracking.
yeah, oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and I can imagine trying to read all their books right before you talk to them. That would be challenging. So what do you think, like, how do you work with people now when they are trying to like identify that spirit or stay in line with that spiritual part of themselves and grow a business? Like, what do you see as the biggest challenges that people are facing? Because I see this all the time too.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's the question from their perspective, and then there's the question from my perspective. So
Mhm.
while they might not characterize it the same way, I would actually see that their the biggest issue that I see most frequently is a disharmony with money. This
Mm,
fundamental belief
mhm.
that the pursuit of money is not sacred,
Right.
and that if you're doing that, you're selling out at some level. And for some, it's more or less conscious. Some will just tell you
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
and say, I want to address this. I don't want to believe this because I want to have more abundance so that I can take care of my aging mother.
Hmm.
But I do believe it. And others, it's just an unconscious belief that just keeps sabotaging them.
Right. Yeah. So how do you address that? Because I see that all the time. And you see that so much in sales. I always say sales is a lot of a confidence issue. And I work with a lot of people who do coaching or things like that. And you're really selling yourself, right? And you're selling like what's down deep. So I can see how that's really hard, but it's very, that's a huge block if you don't think you're worthy asking people, to give you money.
Yeah, so there are two parts of addressing it. So another aspect of that is that sometimes people also, sometimes at an unconscious level, will reject something because they're not good at it. And
Mm-hmm.
so they'll call it, well, I don't do that because it's not spiritual, but really they don't do it because it doesn't work for them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's the two things that you really kind of have to address at the same time. And part of it is giving them the skills like sales coaching,
Mm-hmm.
setting up sales systems for them, helping them figure out what's your sales process
Right.
that works for the particular thing you do, and then coaching them through getting good at it, which I'm sure, this is where your expertise
Mm-hmm.
is, I'm suspecting. And then also dealing with what then comes up. And this is kind of where I draw my, that I'm a psychotherapist, but dealing with what comes up
Right.
from their childhood patterning, from their
Right.
emotions, what happens in their body as they try to do what you've technically told them to do that will be their sales.
Right.
And people change very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Once you shine
That's
a
great to
light
hear.
Yeah, I had this one, I'll give you just one really quick example.
That'd
I
be
had
great.
this one client who was a painter. And if there's one field, like visual artist, and if there's one field that everybody says, well, you can't make money at that, that would probably, painting would probably be pretty high on the list. And he kind of accepted this struggle, the subsistence struggle, but then he did have a reason to want to support his family that he needed more money. And so we worked together, and I gave him we did so much great work on plans for how he would streamline his business and just focus it, get rid of all the chaos, and really just have the streamlined, effective system. And he kept not doing it. So we would meet, we'd plan it all out. He's supposed to go off for 2 weeks to do it, and then we were supposed to meet again to catch up on what he had done, and he kept not doing it. So finally, the third time, I was like, what's going on here? And we delved into it from more of a therapy perspective, and we worked through some memories he'd forgotten about from his childhood related to money and what
Oh,
it meant in his
interesting.
family. And once we processed that through, as well as reconnecting him with his love of painting that was there in the first place. So then the next session was our last session. And so he told me that he had worked through it, that he was like, it was over. So I said, okay, if you've really worked through it,
Mm-hmm.
tell me how much money you made in the last year. So he told me, and then I said, okay, now I want you to commit to me that you're going to make that much in the next 3 months. And he was like, you're nuts. That's impossible. I was like, no, I want you said you've worked through this, so you should be able to do it. And so, he eventually committed, and I kind of forgot about it because it was our last session, so I didn't see him again right away. But a few months later, I just came across something on the internet, and I thought of him, so I sent it to him, and he wrote me back, and he goes, thanks for the link, and by the way, I thought you'd be interested to know that the goal we set, I've exceeded it by over $3,000.
Oh my God, that's
it's
amazing.
like the lights are on or the lights are off. Once the lights are on, everything is as clear as day. But just a moment before that, it was you couldn't see anything. You couldn't figure out what was going on just because the lights were off. And so it doesn't have to be this long period of climbing out of a hole.
Yeah, I love that. And I find that sometimes, if you just dig into what that fear is, you realize there's something like great on the other side. Like I had an example of that. I was having such a hard time writing on my blog and writing these email newsletters. And but I was finding it very easy to do Periscope or to do Blabs. And I thought, God, what is this resistance? Because I would keep setting these goals for myself. Like I need to be writing. And then once I thought about it, I was like, I had kind of forgotten this dream that I had about being a writer, and that is something that I have so much respect for, like amazing writers. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. I think it was really this fear that I had about kind of diving into that and not being good enough. So I was like, wow, that's super interesting when you think about, you just think a level deeper and it brings up all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's so true. So what else? So you see like kind of a mindset around money, which is interesting. And I think, there's so much that goes into play on that, but I love that story. What else do you see with like small business owners? Because you work with smaller business owners or entrepreneurs.
That's kind of the difference between a Spirit Tech and Awaken. And because I can bring the spiritual component in. Like if you go into a corporation, it's not the owner who brings you in. It's an employee who they've been given this project they need completed. Their only concern is complete this project and don't get me fired. Right? Do it successfully. Don't cost me my job. That's all they care about, right? Whereas with an owner of a business, it could be like, look, let's work at this as a part of the development of your life. Like, let's just create a a joyful life for you. Isn't that why you went into business in the first place? Like, being a spiritual being is fun. This is meant to be fun. It's not so somber and serious. And yet there is some very real structure. So actually the next most frequent issue that I see isn't really related to the spiritual side. It's the other side of it. Is that they can see themselves as being very spiritual, and so they're really in it for the service for a lot of people. They're really wanting, and that's beautiful. And yet you have to have some structure where you're using your mind in a really focused way, and you're like figuring things out. You're applying something. I like to use an agile development model. So, you're structuring a plan, you're executing the plan, you're measuring your feedback, you're making strategic decisions based on that feedback. You're going out with a revised plan, repeat, right? So that structure, and not just doing that just in marketing, because when I say that, people automatically think of marketing, but it's not just marketing. If you go into any business, you do not see that the marketing department is 90% of the square footage. There's a lot else going on in that business. And small business, if I go into Cisco Systems, they know that they need an operations department. I don't have to tell them that. They know they need a business development department. They know they need customer service. They know they need finance. They know all of this stuff, right? They maybe want it better, but they know they've got to have it. Sole proprietors oftentimes don't even know what those things are, let alone that there's something they're not doing to fulfill those roles. And
that's so
and
true.
I would say that this is the biggest problem of not knowing what they don't know. So just their solution to everything is more marketing, more marketing, more marketing. And sometimes the problem is they've got too much marketing going on. They're harried and nothing's ever converting because they never leave marketing and then go into sales and then go into operations and then go into delivery and all of those other things that need to happen.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, as much as I, was glad to get out of the corporate world, I do agree that when you've never been exposed to that, it's really hard to understand like how valuable an HR team is or how important it is to have these different teams that really support each other. So I think that's so true. And, obviously these big companies have these huge frameworks. And I learned a lot about organization from working at these big companies, even though it didn't feel right for me and it wasn't, where I wanted to be for a lot of other reasons. I did appreciate like the structure they had and the processes they had. And I'm naturally a very unprocess oriented person. But from working at those companies, I found the processes that work for me, and I learned a lot. So I'm grateful for that. So I think that's so true. If you've never seen it,
isn't it funny? Like I don't know if you're like me. I'm guessing that maybe you are. That like in your 20s, you were like, I so envy those people who like don't have to kind of do this corporate grind. They could just like do their passion or whatever. And it's like little did we know that it would come around full circle. That our having had to do that like makes us so much better at doing this thing where we get to work from home and help people in creative ways.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Yeah, and I always say like, working there, I would never have found myself and my passion if I hadn't lost myself so much in the corporate world. So, because there it's very much of a culture where everyone, I feel like, is encouraged to be the same, to keep your head down, to work hard. And individuality is really not valued, I didn't find at all. I mean, it was very much repressed in all of the companies I worked with. And I worked at like Silicon Valley, like innovation companies. So it was kind of amazing that was
innovation, not that kind of innovation. They only went product innovation, not people.
Product innovation, but no like personal innovation. And I was so shocked by that, but I was so glad too, because I was so disconnected from like myself and what my passions were. But if I hadn't been that disconnected, I don't think I would have been so motivated to find it. So I think in that way, it served like a great purpose and it was great for me. And then I learned, all these processes and things that are really useful. And it's so funny because I just recently talked to an old colleague who still works at one of the same companies that I worked at. And it's been like, God, I think like 7 years. And he just started like, and I was like, God, I wonder if that guy's going to work there forever. Because it was, this specific company was very, very old school corporate, manage people with fear, like an intimidation, kind of like just a very old school mentality that I did not feel like worked for most people. And so a lot of people left and he was still there. But he just recently told me he went to something called Soul Camp, which I'm like, sounds good. I looked it up and it looks like he's having this like amazing awakening where I'm like, awesome. That's so great because I love, if someone likes it there, I'm so happy, but I don't remember ever recalling someone who like was so passionate about waking up to their job in the morning. And I'm so glad you mentioned fun because I don't think like fun like even occurs to people in a lot of these jobs or even entrepreneurs that like it's supposed to be fun. Like your day should be like you should wake up excited. It doesn't have to be every day, but there should be some element of fun in your life.
And thankfully,
for sure.
Thankfully, this is shifting a little bit, and that's kind of like my work with conscious business leaders is around people who are working at the forefront of seeing that shift come about, or whether they're business owners themselves and they are causing that shift in their own company. Like the guy I interviewed last week, that guy's an amazing guy. He's got like a 7-figure annual, getting close to 8-figure annual revenue business, and he's starting another business now. He also has a nonprofit that's been running for like 12 years that brings like the top spiritual teachers. He hosts them, and he's been also starting another nonprofit helping indigenous people in the Philippines. Like he has all this stuff going on, and so he is a conscious business leader in that he's simply bringing these things, but he only has like a couple dozen employees, right? He's not this huge business, but and he's not out there speaking on it. Like that was the first interview he ever gave.
Amazing.
He was so nervous about doing it. He kept like writing me beforehand about what I was going to ask him. I'm like, look, just relax. It's just going to be fun.
Right.
But because he's not someone who sees himself as an expert on that, he's just living it.
Right.
But they're getting to be, and of course, my work with Awaken is trying to get there to be even more and more people who are more and more successful. And they're finding that actually by applying, like bringing the sacred into what they do, it's leading to more revenue growth, more staff stability, because turnover is a huge bleed on any budget, and more innovation in terms of being at market with the right version of the right product at the right time, or the right offering. That when we're tapping into the spiritual knowing and the amount of information available there, we're geniuses. Whereas when we're working on it on our own, even if we are technically geniuses, there's too much that we cannot predict or control.
Right. Yeah, so true. So you had said you had this topic, which was great, the beauty of service and reciprocity. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I'm so curious what your like experiences in that, because I've been having a lot of conversations about sales, and sales comes into it a lot, and about how sales is selling is serving. So I'd love to hear your take on that and where that comes from, like the story behind it.
Yeah, well, story behind it, I don't know. I'm a channeler, right? So that's where it comes from. It just comes. But in terms of what has come to me when I've been getting ready to lead a meditation for like a group that I coach on spirit-led business, on being successful with a spirit-led life, like how do you do that? And so we have these regular coaching calls, and so I always bring through a meditation just to start that off. And so one of the times what came through was just realizing that, I mean, we could do it right now if you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't even have to close
Let's
your
do
eyes.
It. Awesome.
Just take a few minutes. So just become aware a moment. First, just really feel yourself in your body, and just feels good to be in a body, right? There's a chair supporting you. You could just let your muscles relax. Just let the chair support you. And you're breathing. And you don't have to make yourself breathe. It's just happening.
Right.
And it just feels good to just relax your muscles and be supported and let the breath flow and just be alive. And as we feel this good feeling, just become aware of like all the people that you're going to someday help. Just like imagine that it's just like a sea of faces. I don't know if there are thousands of them, hundreds of thousands, millions, however many just feels comfortable to you, feels true. Just kind of see a sea of faces in front of you of all the people who need what you can provide.
Right.
And they're just looking at you, and they're acknowledging you, and they're recognizing you as someone who can help them. And so when you feel that love coming from them, you glow brighter, you stand taller, you put yourself forward more. And when you do that, there are more faces, more of them start seeing you, more of them start turning and noticing that you're there, and that, oh my gosh, this person has what I've needed. I can get this need fulfilled now. And just kind of feel this real love flowing out from you to them and from them to you. You know, their gratitude.
Yeah.
They're just so, I mean, can you remember a time when you really needed something and then you found the perfect person who gave it to you? And just how great it felt to find them. It was almost as if they practically rescued you. It's like, oh, you're what I've been looking for. And then think about when you made the exchange, if it was a service and you paid them for it. And think about how grateful you were, how glad you were to reciprocate, to give them money so that, to support their life, to whether they need it for food or entertainment or housing or their families, whatever they needed it for, to give them that support in return for the support they've given you. You felt so good.
Yeah.
And now realize that all these people, they're now feeling that way about you. You've helped them so much. You've answered their prayer, and they feel really good about reciprocating and completing the circle between you. And just feel what that feels like as you're all there together, like in this co-creative space of giving and receiving love in the form of service and dollars and whatever it is that you're exchanging. This is just being alive, and this is just being in the flow of life in a really loving way.
That is awesome. I love that. I mean, that is, I've tried to explain that to many people that, you know, it is, and to kind of like go into that state where you kind of are imagining that you are sharing, I always say, your magic or your special gift with someone, and that they are as grateful to you as you are to them. But that, the way you expressed it, that was unbelievable. I love that. That is exactly like you're my what I'm teaching. I just should take you and take the video and just be like, here we go.
This is the thing. So this is the other thing about being spirit led. Like if you want it to keep expanding and keep being really miraculous in how things unfold, you don't get to take credit for it. You know, it's like it's not being done by you, it's being done through you. And suddenly that's good enough.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. Amazing. Oh, see, we have some good comments. Thank you, Starness. Yeah. Oh, that's really incredible. So what, now, can you give us a little background on your personal story? Because I'm now, like, you're so amazing. I want to hear more.
You're funny. You know, I have a kind of a complicated story, but I guess, you know, there are a couple of plot lines. Like one plot line is the story, like I was a really, really poor kid. And I, you know, eventually helped some friends of mine become millionaires, but I still had an identity of poverty myself. Even though, you know, I went to a really great college and stuff like that, and I was surrounded by very, very wealthy people and children of very, very famous people, but I still had an identity myself of being poor. And that carried on through my 20s, and I was always kind of in and out of money. And, you know, I have a massively introverted personality, so I was in and out of jobs because I just found it so hard to be in the environment, in the workplace environment for more than like 7 months at a time. And that also keeps you in subsistence. Like you might make a little bit of money, but then you spend it on not working.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how it went. But then eventually going in and out of jobs, I learned enough that I just kind of, even though I hadn't been trained as a business consultant, some friends of mine, they really needed help in their company, and they trusted me as a person. They gave me free reign. And I turned their business around in 1 year that they were able to finally sell it for like $12 million. And so they instantly became, you know, multimillionaires. And their lives greatly improved after that. And that taught me, and they were so grateful to me. They attributed it to me so clearly that they actually came to me and said, no, this happened because if you let us do something for you in return. And so they like sent me to a weekend meditation retreat as a thank you, and that, which was nice. But the key thing was they were so grateful to me that they backed it up with action. Like it wasn't just, oh, thanks for your help. It was like, no, you made us millionaires.
Right.
And that got through to me. Like, I'm someone who makes millionaires. I'm not a poor kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm someone who makes millionaires. So
Right.
then I tried to make myself into a millionaire. Didn't work the first time out, which was the time I was doing the radio show before.
Right.
That one did not work. Did not make $1.
Yeah.
7
Although it
months
sounds like
working it.
amazing, like regardless.
The period was very fertile, but I was working my butt off, and I never made a penny, not $1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then I didn't know, I knew some things, I knew how to help them, but I didn't really know the structure of just how do you build a business. So when I wound up getting hired at business consulting firms, then they taught me that aspect of it. And so then the next time I went to do a business, I was able to turn myself into a millionaire, and which also, was a fantastic life transition. So there's that story of just not knowing how to make money, and then coming and not identifying with being someone who can have money, to learning how to make money and identifying as someone who can have and make money for themselves and others. So that's one journey. But the more profound journey to me is the spiritual journey, because that's the journey that we're all on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really this thing, and here I have to get around the edges of it because I'm so on the journey that I don't entirely see it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this aspect where we are each spiritual beings having a human experience. And part of that human physical experience is that these bodies are mortal. They are in danger, they are under threat, they are eventually going to die. They need to have constant care given to them, sustenance, protection from the elements, food, rest, constantly, every day, just to keep us in this game. And there's a way in which I think a lot of us rebel against that. There's this way in which we feel like it shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't, and there's like, I don't want to be here. I'm not going to invest myself. But when we don't fully invest ourselves in the game we're playing, then we get very mixed results, and we get a lot less life. And we don't fully incarnate as spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're just not really in the game. And so a big part of my journey has been about coming more fully into the game.
That's so interesting, because I really resonate with that too when you said that. And I think there's so much, like for me, there's so much fear, right? Like behind that maybe, and it comes back to me thinking like, oh, like when I worked in these jobs, I was living up to someone else's idea of success. And I kind of finally realized that, like, I thought I need to have the VP role. I have to be making this amount of money. I have to have this many people manage me. And it took me a while to see, like, that's not what I really want. That's what other people want. And I'm taking on like what they want. And so it took me a while to see that, and it's very interesting for me now, because I realized I had this whole process where I just got fired from my last, actually 2 jobs in the last 8 months. And that to me was a wake up call, because I had always known, like I've had my own businesses before, and I've been an entrepreneur, but I finally was like, okay, this is the universe telling me I need to just start moving forward. And it was a very long, I had been thinking about it for 2 years, and that kind of pushed me. But now it's like, how do I live my life in this way that is really the way I want, if no one else is telling me and it's just me? And that's kind of scary, right? Because it's like, I don't know what I want. And I still have these ideas like, maybe, that I'm not sure if it's my idea or if it's, society's idea of what my success should be. And so that's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about lately. Like, I'm in control of all of my time now. How do so I could go to yoga in the middle of the day. I can go out to a long lunch, but I don't yet, because I haven't gotten like comfortable enough that I can do that. So I find like that's a really interesting, that I'm like, I would not think I would have that problem.
This way, so,
but it's something. So
can I coach you through this a little bit?
Yeah,
so think of it this way. If you absolutely knew that the money was taken care of, like let's say you had in one of your previous jobs, you'd invested in something with the company, and you vested in that stock, and now it just pays you, and it may not be a ridiculous amount of money, like you're not going to go move to Cannes, but it's paying your rent, it's paying your car payment, it's just taking over your basic living expenses with you doing nothing whatsoever. So just really feel what that feels like for a moment. Really kind of settle into that feeling like this is my life. Like, oh my God, everything is taken care of. Like my staying in the game, my being able to be sustained in this body, I don't need to give attention to that. It's done. Now what? How do you really want to spend a typical week? What do you want to do, and what impact do you want to be having on others in a typical week?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think that's, what motivates me now. And I think for me, it's, getting my message out to a certain amount of people, not like a handful, like a large amount of people, but then also balancing that with time, like quality time with my kids, with my husband, with my family, and also having like time for me, which I've never prioritized in the past. And so that's why it's one of those things where I'm starting to do it little now, but I'm like, I need to do that for me, because that's what's kind of, I feel like it has been missing.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a big element that's just the nurturance of time with family, relationships. You want to be able to invest more in relationships, which, what a beautiful thing, because so much a part of our experience of being here is to be here together and to be relating to each other in a loving way, even though we're each in separate bodies, having separate realities. Even your kids, they have their own world going on, and even though you're physically taking care of them, they still have that mortal sense of keeping themselves alive and fear of death, right? That's a part of every single one of us. We all want to feel good. We all want to avoid pain. We're all having these separate experiences of that and trying to do it in a loving way together. And so there is a huge value in the time it takes to do that in a more and more loving, expansive, and enlightened way. Right? So that's one thing. It sounds like you'd like to use that freedom for. What else? So let's go bigger period of time instead of a typical week, a typical year. Over the course of a typical year, where the financial is just done, what's the activity? What's the impact?
Sorry, your video was breaking up a little bit.
So I was saying over a longer period of time. So that would be a week, but over, like, say, a year, over the course of a year, what would be the general kind of flow of your life, your activity, and what would be the effect that you would be having on others? What would be the kind of impact? Like, how would other people's lives be different because of how you spent that year?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see the people I work with become much more successful in their businesses, because my idea behind why I teach Soulful Selling is so all of these people who are sharing this amazing gift can do what I'm doing to more people as well and make, more money. So it's kind of this ripple effect where we're all helping each other share their, whatever your gift is. And then everyone's being, able to make more money from that so they can support themselves.
Yeah. And so are you tending to work with them face-to-face or more remotely?
No, it's more remote. I'm doing online classes. I actually have a free class starting tomorrow that I'm doing a free mini class. That's like Soulful Selling Bootcamp. So I'm doing that. That's actually starting tomorrow.
But there are more, and then you're doing bigger classes or more frequently?
Bigger, hopefully bigger and more frequent. So, the first official class is starting in December. And then I'm hoping, I don't know how many people will sign up, but my goal, is to have many, many, many more people that I'm reaching over the next year.
How many you would really like to have in an ideal?
In the next year?
Yeah, well, in each group, like in a given group, how many would be an ideal number for you?
An ideal in the beginning would be probably like 150 people.
Okay, so that's a good
I don't want it to be too big, but I don't want it to be too small. Just because of the way people tend to participate. Sometimes people are not live, sometimes they're watching the recording. So that's the goal. And then I want to do some more advanced classes as well, because there's some people who get like the stuff that you're saying. And I've worked with a couple of folks who are really good and who don't have the money blocks, and they're very, very confident, but they do need like the sales skills or the sales management part, which I think is a whole nother angle once you're managing more than, if you're the owner of the business and you're selling, managing a sales team.
Yeah.
It's a whole, yeah, it's so much more
Totally different
complicated.
systems.
And
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and that's also, I would love to share that with big companies, because I see in all of the sales training that I deal with, and even in a lot of like very big tech companies still, they're really managing with kind of fear and intimidation, these sales like management teams, which is obviously not the best way to motivate people, right? And everyone knows that, yet it's been done that way for so long that people are just so resistant to changing that. And I think they feel comfortable because that's what how someone managed them a long time ago.
So like
and that's where I really like to read.
Yeah. So there are two.
These larger companies.
So there are two tracks that you want to work. It's like a lot of more individual sole proprietors in the group that's done remotely. And then I assume, would it be in office when you're working with the corporate clients, you'd go in to work with their teams on site?
Yeah, it'd be partially in person, and then they would do like a follow-up online, like kind of workshop.
Okay. So but basically what you want to do is, if you can, there's a combination of things that you can do that will help you to see the next steps to creating this vision. And the answers will be put right in front of you. You won't have to figure it out. You just have to do the next logical thing that needs to be done. So what you do so that you can work that way is clarifying the vision like you're doing right now. And you see, like, I don't know if you notice it, but as you're talking, you keep kind of looking up, and it's because you're seeing it. You're having to kind of disconnect a little bit from seeing here to see the vision. And when you do that, if you kind of let your emotions go with it, really let yourself feel what that vision feels like. It's like almost like a prayer. And you're saying, hey, spiritual self, that part of me that's not fully incarnated, I need your attention right now. I need you to kind of get on this vision for me. And it would feel really good. And you like feeling really, really good. So you could be more present with me here, feeling really good with me if you just kind of get on that. And so that's one thing. And then the other aspect of it is that being really attentive, like, being active, being really engaged, which I don't think there's any threat if you're not doing that. Not harried though, because if you're trying to figure it out so much with your mind and you're just trying to stay in motion for the sake of motion, then you miss its guidance of what it's trying to put right in front of you. That's the easy thing. It may not make sense, but it leads to something. Just I like to teach with stories because it just like makes the point so much more than theory.
Yeah, I love stories.
So one of my clients, like, she had a dance studio, and she doesn't mind me telling the story. She was on one of my live coaching calls, and she and I told the story together. So she's cool with. I won't say her name, but she's cool with. So she had a dance studio, and she also had a full-time job, and she loved her commute. She had this 15-minute fantastic commute, and she liked working with a team of people, but she wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she had danced her entire life. So she thought, I'll open a dance studio and I'll become an entrepreneur in that way. So I think it was in our second session of like a 3-month program that what came through for me from a level of spirit is, I can't even believe this came out of my mouth, but I said, you've got the exact number of clients that you want, which is 0, because you don't want a dance studio. And it hit her like a ton of bricks. It hit me like a ton. I can't believe I said that. But it just like came through, right? And so we've kind of processed, and we talked about, and we clarified what she really liked. And she liked certain elements of being an entrepreneur. She liked being able to experiment and test something and see how it comes back, and count success with money, and which is something that you can easily count. It's not amorphous, right? So you have this feedback of how you're playing the game, and she liked working with a team. She didn't want to have this studio by herself. She didn't really like teaching dance classes, and she liked a steady paycheck, and there were all these things. So we just clarified every little detail, just like you were doing just then, but just to a much finer detail. The next time I met with her, which was like 2 weeks later, she says, "You're not going to believe what happened." Within the last 2 weeks, I got a call. She said, first I had to go into mourning over letting go of my dance studio, because that was really hard when we talked about that, and I really felt the loss. And she said, but once I processed that and I really let it go, and I realized that it was true, that really, I just really didn't want that business. She said, I got a call within days, and they said that they'd heard about me, and there's this major corporation. They were starting an intrapreneur unit that would be a small unit within the company that would have independence, that would get to test out new ideas like an agile small business would, to bring them to see if it would scale up. And they wanted to know if she wanted to come in and interview for the job. So in the 2 weeks, she had in fact gone in. They made her an offer. She got to do she had her own team. She got to be entrepreneurial. She had a steady paycheck. And check this out. It's right across the street from her old job. It didn't even change her purpose.
Oh. So it couldn't be better.
You ask, and it can, and I mean, I could tell you so many stories from my own life as well, like of just things like from the time that I clarified it and knew how to allow it, knew how to engage with it. It was just like laid at my feet. I just had to say yes, and then follow through it. And then the next thing is given, and then the next.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens.
By the time you're done, the vision is bigger than you. The vision that your spiritual self has for you is bigger than the greatest vision that you have for you.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's, yeah, sometimes we don't even see it because we're seeing a part of it. That's so interesting. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. And I have so many stories like that too, where it's like, you just almost have to clarify it. And some people will say like, oh, that's goal setting, but it's like a little bit different, right? It's more of clarity of what you want, or how you want to feel. And it's, so I feel like it's kind of better than goal setting. Like goal setting is great, but yeah, it's like a different.
It's evocative. You know, there's an aspect of it that the clarification itself is creative. Whereas in goal setting, there's this inherent idea that I do not have this thing that I'm trying to get. It's over here. I'm over here. I'm going to plot out, then I'm going to plan out the steps from here to there to achieve this goal. Yeah, you could do it like that. I mean, there is a mechanistic aspect of this universe, and yet there is also a quantum aspect of this universe, and you get to decide which level you want to play the game at. I like to play at the miraculous level. I have no patience for the mechanistic way of playing the game. It takes too long. It's too much hard work, and I get to take credit for it. Whoop-de-doo, my ego can take credit for it, but it's just like so freaking hard. Yeah. Or I can just let it come to me. I don't get to take credit for it, but I get to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's funny because I'm from the East Coast, and I have a lot of friends who are very spiritual and are small business owners, but they still, I feel like it's a little bit of this like New York, or I don't know if it's an East Coast mentality where you have to be like working, pushing yourself, always pushing. And it's very exhausting. And that's how it's so interesting. Even growing up there, I always was like, this is not my place, right? I don't vibe with this well, but it still like influences me so much. And so I will feel like, oh, sometimes there'll be a whole week where I'm like, I just need to absorb all the information I just took in. I need to process it. Like I went to a conference and my brain was like exploding. I'm like, I cannot even do anything. I need like downtime just to like.
But some people will go from conference to conference every weekend for months. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe they have really amazing brains that process that really quickly. I don't know.
Or maybe the hustle is the game. And for a lot of people, and that's why I say sometimes the people are not making the kind of money they want. And they think that the solution is more marketing, but really the solution is less marketing.
I agree. Or working, so I was going to say, or sometimes I think it's like just not working as hard. I mean, I've certainly seen people who are not the smartest or necessarily like the most talented in different jobs where they just push and they work really hard and they end up being successful because of that hard work. But I've seen other people who are kind of like, let the universe guide them, or who kind of more follow how they're feeling and go with that. And I've seen those people be just as successful, and it seems a lot easier and like a lot happier, more joyful way to do it than pushing yourself and being on an airplane every day for 300 days a year.
And this is the really hard thing, because both paths actually work. And so the people who did it by the mechanistic path, they will swear up and down it can't happen any other way. And if you're not hustling, If you're not suffering, if you're not sacrificing,
Mm-hmm.
you don't deserve to achieve, because they sacrifice.
Yeah.
And the last thing in the world that they want to hear is they could have had that same success without sacrificing, that they could have actually enjoyed the ride, and not as an ego, I dominated experience of enjoyment, but as a nurtured human being, relational nourishment way of enjoying every moment of the journey. And yet, both paths work. The key thing, though, is it's a lot easier. Like the path works, but you've got to work it. Like you've got to fully commit to it, right? Whichever one you're going to do. And so the hard thing is the mechanistic path. There's a lot of evidence for that. Like you said, like you were in an environment where everybody was selling that tune, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be so much easier to buy into it because everybody around you is constantly brainwashing
Right.
you
Yeah.
with it. So to buy in and go for it, it could be a lot easier for someone who's in that environment because they've got no support
Right.
for an alternative point of view. And every time they hear someone like us talking like we're talking now, someone else will say, "Oh yeah, those people, they got lucky. You can't count on that." And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what if you could count on luck? What if you could make your own luck?
Yeah.
But the kind of faith that it takes when you don't have examples of that
Mm-hmm.
around you is, well, what it takes for some people is desperation,
Mm-hmm.
right? They try it the other way, they just can't make it work.
Right.
And something lets go in them and they surrender but stay in motion, stay engaged, and then it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, they are fortunate enough to connect with something like this, like whether they're here with us now or on the replay,
Yeah.
there's
Read an
some
amazing book.
conversation
Yeah.
like this,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives them permission. Yes, I validate you can enjoy your life and still become a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
How about that? Is that the game you want to play? Because if you do, come on and play.
Right. And I think once you do look for evidence of that, you actually can find it. I mean, and it's in things like this or different books that you read, but it's like once you start looking for that, it's surprising you do find, you can find a lot of evidence around it. And it's, yeah, I think that if you're in a corporate environment and you're surrounded and all your time is spent there and all those people all have the same mindset, it's different. So maybe expose yourself to different people, right?
I always say you've got to take responsibility for your own brainwashing. It is happening. It is happening constantly. We are all children. We are all impressionable little children.
Yeah.
We are all Pavlov's dog.
Right.
Every single one of us. And so if we don't take responsibility for telling ourselves the story that we want to live, we will get the default story. And the default story of this culture is suffering, sacrifice, death on a cross,
Right.
martyrdom, and then you get into heaven.
No, that's true.
That's the story, and it's being told in different levels of different versions of how explicit that is, but that's the underlying belief system of this particular culture. And I'm not interested in living that story.
Yeah. Do you think that's all human beings, or is that just, do you think, in the US? I'm like curious if every culture.
I think it changes. It changes from culture to culture. There is, because of the thing that I was talking about, that fundamental journey of being a spiritual being that's having a physical experience that is doomed to death, that is so fundamentally unstable and yet wants to be eternal. So that existential struggle is universal. This is just what it's like to be a human, right? And it takes different forms in different cultures as the spiritual and philosophical systems have sought to give people peace within that existential crisis. But very few of them, some, but very few have found a way of making sense of that existential conflict that leads to a life of joy and physical abundance. It's usually in any culture, it's the exceptions within it that have kind of found that. And thankfully, in the world we live in now, with technology like this, the message of those people can spread. I'm so in support of that vision that you have coming to be, because I'm seeing that 150 people per cycle after cycle, having their lives transformed and them going on to transform others. I'm seeing you go into those businesses and change the work environment on that sales team so that it's a nurturing, fun place to be. And, if you think about it, sales has the potential to be such a spiritual thing because it's completely at that edge of giving and receiving. and having fun and win and this is fun and we're playing a game, like it's just, and there's so much creativity and room for spontaneity and room for self-expression. Like it can be the most sacred work if you're taught to do it that way and supported in doing it that way. Right? And so, you know, when I support you and then you support the next person and then that person supports the next person and we just keep going on, we start now with this technology where we can put our voices together. I don't know. Maybe we do build more of a critical mass around these ideas.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and it's almost at the hour. So I want to thank you so much. This has been amazing. You have such great insights. I really appreciate you joining. So
thank you.
Yeah, and so where can people find you at awakenbusinessconsulting.com?
Yeah, awakenbusinessconsulting.com, and you'll see I think for another month. I was going to end it this month, but I added one more month for someone's just for a particular reason. So I'm offering these free 45-minute strategy sessions. So if you've never worked with me before and you'd like to have a strategy session and just let me kind of look, you have to fill out an assessment that's linked to when you go to sign up for the session. And it gives me a view into your business and just kind of where you are in the process, whether you're just starting or trying to grow revenue or trying to add employees. And then we can meet and I can just kind of see, okay, what do you really most need next? What's your growing edge? Where are you getting stuck? Where does the attention need to be? And that's completely free of charge. So just feel free to sign up for one of those.
That's great. And do you have to be in Northern California or can that be anyone anywhere?
No. I've had people in Australia to Denmark.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I want to share just this interview with several groups that I've been a part of because this is just so amazing. So I really appreciate it. And I'm Christine Pereira. You can find me at soulfulsellingbootcamp.com. We do have a free training that's going to start tomorrow, where I'm going to start it on Periscope, and then I'm going to send out the recording. So if you sign up at soulfulsellingbootcamp.com, you will see the recordings, or we will be on Periscope tomorrow at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So thank you so much, Indigo. This was wonderful, and it was great to talk to you. And hopefully we can talk again.
Yeah, you too. You know what I'm doing right now, Christina, though? I want to put in both of our URLs because I just realized that because on Blab, people can just click it.
I know. I always forget about that. Here.
Yeah, I just did mine, and then I was going to do yours, but since I'm saying it, it's probably best that you spell it right.
Okay.
Did you do it? I didn't see it. There we go. Yeah. So then, so everyone who's like catching this on the replay here can just like click straight through. Well, wonderful. And again, like I'm really like just spiritually in support and giving my energy towards the success of your endeavor.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome. Well, thank you. I don't see my recording button still, so if you could stop it, then